Welcome to TINAH Talks, where time is not a healer, but we believe that we all have the power to heal ourselves and take our mental well being into our own hands. This podcast is a byproduct of TINAH, the mental well being marketplace, and a community platform at timeisnotahealer.com, providing you with the best products for your self healing journey. Hit subscribe and follow us on socials if you want support on your mental well being journey. We're your hosts, Sophie and Kelsey. This episode is all about meditation and mindfulness and how this applies to us and our mental wellness.
Exactly. So I think we wanted to do this episode because I think you always get told that when you're going through a mental health blip or you're struggling with anxiety, that meditation or like practicing mindfulness is going to be really good for you. And if I think back to when I first meditation kind of came onto my radar back in maybe 2021, 2022, 2020, 2021, like pandemic times basically. And I remember I was in therapy at that time, and she was like, like meditation, mindfulness would be really good for you. And I was like, I try and I can't do it. And I was the last person that I would have thought would be into meditation, because what nobody really tells you is that meditation is actually so hard. And I would try and meditate, and I would do all the things that I thought that I needed to do to meditate. And actually, I think I didn't really understand what meditation was, or like how it could help me. And then when I finally got into it, I was like, okay, I get it. I can see the benefit. I understand. So I just wanted to like do this episode to kind of reassure anybody that is trying to do meditation or has been told they need to do meditation, that yes, at the beginning it is really difficult, and like it might not stick straight away, but there are ways to get to the point where it actually is beneficial for you. I don't know, what's been your experience with meditation and practicing mindfulness?
Yeah, I mean, very similar. I think so. Like, before I dive into my own from my personal experience, this is things that I've learned, but then things I've also seen just from working in the psych field and just, the communities of like travel. There's a lot of like spiritual communities and travel and stuff like that. And a couple of really big misunderstandings around meditation and mindfulness is that, oh, if I do it once, it'll make me feel better. Right. So that's not the type of practice. That's not what it is. It's not something that you can do once or twice and then you feel the results of it. It's something that you have to actively practice consistently to see any sort of outcome or results. And also, mindfulness and meditation is oftentimes, I don't want to like give like an all enclosing statement, but oftentimes is not something that you can use in the moment of a crisis of like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. Like when you're fully, dissociating or having a panic attack or whatever it may be, um, it oftentimes is not the best solution in the moment, especially if you've never practiced it before. If anything, that then adds to your like frustration and feeling like you're incapable of doing things. Um, so just a little note for people out there, if you're like, well, I'm deep in it. Not that you'd be like having a panic attack listening to this podcast, but that's not the right time to be practicing it. It's about finding somewhere else in your day that you know that you can just give a little time and effort and energy and practice it over time. And then that's what helps to one, keep you resilient in the face of maybe those more um like deeper upheavals of emotions and things like that. But then it can also be used like after the fact of the crises to help calm and like resettle and reground. But just like you, it's fucking hard. It's really, really hard. I remember when I used to work in inpatient psychiatry, and this is an ode to one of my coworkers who actually just passed in the last 6 months, and I was very close with him, and he was one of the only people. Everyone encouraged me to go on my travels, but he'd like traveled to Nepal. He'd written amazing books on meditation. He knew his shit with mindfulness and meditation, and he ran a group on our unit called the Loving Kindness Meditation Group. And when I would work evening shifts with him, that was his shift. I'd be like, "Psh, whatever, like mindfulness meditation, like I don't care about that." And like we'd have to attend the group sometimes because we'd have to like co-run it. He would run it, but like I would be there as just like support, and I would do it. And And it always felt nice, but I always it didn't click for me. Like I didn't understand what it was all about. And it wasn't until further into my journey of quitting my job and traveling across the world and, just being on my own and figuring out how I could heal some of my own stuff that I had going on, which I started with breath work, not just straight mindfulness like meditation. And then from the breath work, which fun fact, that's an easy way to make meditation easier is if you focus on doing breath stuff first. And then I did meditation and then I really saw the benefits of it. And I was like, oh, Bill was really on to something. Like he really knew. And when I came back after my first year and a half of being gone, he was the first person that I was like, yo, like I finally get it now. But I don't know, I guess it's just an experience you kind of have to you have to kinda go through, you have to try actively and go through the frustration of, because it's a lot of true meditation is the idea of it is not emptying your head of thoughts, but being able to let your thoughts pass without attaching anything to it, and it's it's a hard skill to learn, especially if you're an anxious person.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I think yeah, I think it's definitely something that you have to. It's like what we were talking about the other day. We said that the mind is a muscle, right? So it's like you have to train it, and like ultimately, you doing meditation as a practice is you training your brain. But that's funny that you say like, oh, you were onto something, like someone told you about it, and like it gave you that experience, and then you were like, actually, it only clicks later on. That was exactly very similar to me. Like I've been told by, for example, when I lived in London, I was living with my housemate. My housemate, I wouldn't class him as a spiritual person, but like he
Right.
was into meditation at the time. And I think because he's also struggled with his own mental health stuff, and that really had helped him. And I don't know how he managed to get into that. I'm not sure, but he was always like, Sophie, like, because he could see me running around in a frantic state, like trying to like just
Yeah.
manage my life. He was like, Sophie, meditation would really help you. And I was like, yeah, but I can't. Yeah, but I can't. Like, that would always be like, I'd be like, I just can't shut my brain off. Like, and then it wasn't until like I started getting into yoga a bit later on down the line. So probably in 2020, when did I move to Bali? Like 2021. I started getting into
Yeah.
yoga like before I moved to Bali, and then I moved to Bali. And obviously yoga's huge in Bali. So
Mhm.
I started practicing yoga way more frequently, and obviously as part of yoga, breathing and like shavasana, which is almost like a meditation. Normally at the beginning of yoga, you're doing meditation as well. And first of all, with the breathing, I when I started doing yoga and I realized like when it's all about breath, right? Like you're doing all of the
Yeah.
movements to breath. And that made me very much realize how much I don't breathe, first of
Oh,
all.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
first of all, that made me realize that actually I have never really taken a full breath in my life, probably. I
Yeah.
was like, what's this feeling? Like I suddenly feel some kind of relief from actually taking a deep breath. And then from that I started realizing like how nice it felt to be in like stillness and calm, and like that was my first kind of introduction probably in 2022, like to be fully immersed into like yoga and sitting with myself for a while.
Right.
But I still didn't get it until way later. Like I
Yeah.
also similar to you. Like I started with the breathing because you told me to do the breathing when we first
Yeah.
met. You gave me
Yeah.
the concept of square breathing, so thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I started there, and then from there, I gradually kind of got more and more into it, and the randomly. So I was meditating in like a sense of I was doing I wouldn't say I was meditating. I was actually more doing what is it
Like
called? Like
mindful walking or
no, actually it was more like hypnosis meditations.
okay.
So
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
they were like things that like fully put you into like a subconscious state. Like they were talking
Yeah.
like they're almost like guided meditations, but I would say they're more specifically focused on like certain uh like shadow work, for example, or
Yeah.
inner child work. So they kind of take you into like a meditation that makes you start thinking about that. And I started realizing like how powerful they were, and I needed that
Yeah.
guidance at the beginning. And then I also started with sleep meditations as well. So things just before I went to sleep, just trying to get me, because that was the point where
Yeah.
my head was most crazy, talking to myself in a bad way at that time.
Yeah.
So I would like do sleep meditations, and that was like kind of my introduction. But then it wasn't until I actually went to Thailand in December 2022 that I was like, do you know what, I'm in Thailand, I've heard all about these like Vipassana, which is a style of meditation, like mindfulness meditation, retreats that I could go on, and they're completely free. You go and live like a monk basically in
Yeah.
the in what was it even called, like a monastery in a
Hmm.
monastery, and you go there, it's completely free, you just rock up, you don't even need to like sign up to it, and they basically teach you how to do Vipassana meditation for however long you want to stay there. And you can stay there 3 days, you can stay there a month, you can stay there a week, like however long you want to be there. And that was a life-changing experience, I think, for me, because that really, really taught me lots of different techniques on how to meditate, how to be with myself, how to skip through
Yep.
my thoughts. And that, I think, was the kind of start of my actual real meditation, mindfulness
Yeah.
journey. And then actually straight after that, my sister recommended me an app, and my sister again isn't a very spiritual or doesn't do meditation as a
Yeah.
person, but she had found this app that had really started working for her, and I started using it, and that has also been a game changer, because it actually teaches you, where you mentioned earlier loving kindness meditations, actually teaches you
Yeah.
how to do a loving kindness meditation, for example.
Right.
So it's called Balance app, if anybody wants to
I was to
try
say,
it.
what's the app name?
Yeah, Balance, it's amazing, it's so good, and I think you get a year free. So I've literally just finished my free
Mhm.
trial, and I'm 100% going to resubscribe because it's so good. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's interesting, isn't it, how much resistance comes at the beginning of a meditation journey, and then suddenly you're like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think like, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head, and it got me thinking more about like, how did I actually get into my meditation journey? And like, I mean, like, I think, right, it's really hard to get into it. We have a lot of resistance because if your mind is already going a mile a minute, it's like really, really difficult to do. But I think the somatic, like the physical somatic practices, like doing yoga and moving your body with your breath is like a really good way of like prepping yourself to be able to slow down your thoughts. Same with focusing on breath work. And how I actually got into breath work, it wasn't because I was like, oh, I want to be able to meditate. That's not because I was thinking about it while you were talking. And um, so for me, I have a lot of trauma in my background, and like my memory is trash. There's years of my life that I don't remember. And one of the things that come with trauma is like really, this is all relevant to spiked cortisol levels. And I got some pretty high cortisol levels, and that influences a lot of things in your body. And one of the things that severely affected for me was my immune system. So I was getting sick all the time. And I'm talking like I'd get strep, then I'd get flu, then I get strep again. Like I was just sick all the time, and I was really sensitive to stuff. And so it was my first time in Indonesia. This was in 2018, which like, by the way, I didn't like Bali the first time that I went. I was not a
Wasn't
fan.
an
I was
eat,
a little
pray, love
overwhelmed.
moment.
Oh, hell no. It was not Eat, Pray, Love. That was not what it was. But I did meet some really incredible people. And then that's what kind of like got me into liking, Asia, and like kind of I ended up staying there for 4.5 years. Not Bali. I moved out of Bali, but I was in Southeast Asia for 4.5 years. And um people were talking about like we were talking about cortisol levels, stress, and someone mentioned Wim Hof breathing and like ice baths and things like that. And they were discussing how like the breathing style that this guy Wim Hof does, which if you don't know, it's this guy who's from like Holland or something. He's got a lot of world records where he can like walk around or run in like ice cold weather in barefoot shorts, whatever, because he can regulate his temperature through breath work. But there's a lot of other things with this style of breathing, which comes from it comes from an overarching style of breathing, like ancient, and he's just now like refined it and calls it Wim Hof breathing to like a particular style. And it can really help to lower cortisol levels. It can help to uproot any like stored emotions you have in your body, to like re-regulate what's happening, like hyperoxidize your blood. And it can help with a lot of things. It's helped a lot of people who are struggling with cancer, and then they beat cancer. I'm not saying just because of this, but it's been like a big tool for that. So I was like, all right, if this can help me with my immune system, let's do it. So I ended up doing Wim Hof breathing for a year. And in doing that, I that's like it changed my world. That's why how I got into breath work, and it was amazing. And like you kind of get a little bit of a high from doing Wim Hof breathing.
Yeah.
So like that like set me up to start doing meditation right after the fact. Like I was like, this feels so good. My mind is calm. Let's see if I can like ride it out and ride the wave. And then I started using apps and stuff. The very first app that I used that I loved to like teach me meditation was Headspace. I did their free trial. And then once I kind of got like the lay of the land of that and learning like what different meditations were, that's when I went over. For me, I did Insight Timer because it has like a plethora of things you can pick from for free, which is really nice. Or you can just have like your own timer bell and do that. And so I use it with like breathing. After I did Wim Hof for like a year, like every day straight. And then so I stopped and I switched to a more relaxed style of breathing, square breathing. And I do that. And then like I'll continue into meditation. But that was like how it like was a game changer for me. So much so that I got a tattoo on my back about breath
Wow. Yeah.
and breathing.
Yeah. Wim Hof's quite intense as well, isn't it? Like that's quite an
Yeah.
intense style of breathing. If anybody doesn't know, it's very much like a hyperventilation. That's right, isn't it? Am I saying that
It's
right?
not it's not hyperventilation, it's just that you're supposed to be taking in, and actually, that's wild. I haven't done this since 2018. I just started yesterday, and
Oh,
I
weird.
did it again this morning. I'm feeling banging, I'm feeling great. I'm doing it to prepare for going to high elevation in Peru. So, like, that's
Good
part
idea.
of, yeah, part of what I'm doing, and it's been really, really nice. But no, so it's not meant to be hyperventilation. It's just basically it's a faster style of breathing, but you're trying to do deep breaths into your belly and then like exhaling out. And it's not supposed to having a pause at the top or the end. So it's just like inhale, exhale, and like a wave, like a circle, inhale, exhale. And you do I think 30 breaths. And then on the last one, you exhale completely and then you hold your breath. But because you're doing like a rapid cycle of breathing, not like hyperventilating into your chest. That's not what you want at all. What's happening during that is you're bringing in a lot of oxygen to your body. And so you're hyperoxygenating your blood. And then when you hold your breath, which actually having um like carbon dioxide buildup a little bit in your system can be really, really helpful for like cellular regeneration and all these other things. I researched it many years ago, and I'm just giving kind of the over bits views of it, but it's really good for our organs, for our cellular structures, and for our lungs. And it kind of helps to like wash out everything, which they say like in the end, the breath is the link between the mind and the body. And so that's like a really good segue into then like calming the mind and being able to attempt
Yeah.
meditation and practicing it.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think, yeah, like I think breathwork is probably where most people start. And I think it's also like meditation over the past few years, I guess, has become a bit more mainstream, hasn't it? Obviously, it's an ancient practice
Yeah.
from India, but over the past few years, it's definitely become a lot more mainstream. There's a lot of celebrities that endorse it. There's people like Jay Shetty, for example, that also went to like the monastery and had that whole experience and lived like a monk, and now promotes his whole business and mission to get other people into practicing more mindfulness, I guess, or living a more mindful life. And I think is definitely something that I would suggest to anybody personally to get into, if you can, if you can take the practice. And I think if it feels really difficult when you're starting, there's a few things that, like for me, that I've now in hindsight realized that are definitely very good ways to get into it. One
Yeah.
would be definitely to start with the breathing, because that's ultimately the easiest thing for you to control, right? Like your breath is fully in your control. How you breathe is fully in your control. And
Right.
like there's so many different, we can link some in the show notes, like different, maybe like if you've got a Wim Hof like basic training or whatever, like how to
Yeah.
do it,
We
similar to the square breathing YouTube video that you first sent me, which set me off on this this
yes.
this spiral. The That's
Which
definitely something that we can share.
Which I just want to chime in, like, I know some people, I've seen this where, like, when you focus on your breath, sometimes that makes you more anxious. Like, your reaction to breath work is a little bit more intense if you are in a particular way with your anxiety, which, so if breath isn't a great starting place for you, then yoga, because yoga is where
Yeah,
you're focusing on your body movement with breath. And it's not just like focusing on your breath, which can sometimes like stress people out.
yeah,
So I just wanted to throw that caveat in there because I know
definitely.
sometimes um, it can be a little bit more anxiety provoking physically in your body, right? Because like you could start hyperventilating in your body, you might feel calm, but then that's going to cause you to feel anxious. And some people have that natural reaction. It's almost like very similar. Do you know what white coat syndrome is?
No, no, I don't.
People people experience it when they go to the doctor's office because it's
Ah,
such bright lights and all white
oh yeah.
walls.
Okay.
And so like their blood pressure may be fantastic and all their levels may be their respiratory rates might be great, but because they're in the doctor's office, they're like panicked a little bit because of the bright lights and they're like talking to a doctor. And so when they do their blood pressure, take the respiratory rate, it's like through the roof. But that's not what their normal
Yeah.
standing levels are, which is like kind of the same idea of how sometimes breath work can like have the reverse effect depending on like who you are and what you are. So that's why I just wanted to give the caveat that like if that's not good for you, then try some like really basic yoga. You do not have to be flexible.
No, I think people misunderstand also what yoga is as well. Like yoga is a mindfulness practice as much as it is,
Yes.
because it's not, it is exercise, but it's not really, is it? Like it's not like an intensive workout or anything like that. You can actually just make it into a mindful practice if you did something like yin, for example, where it's all
Mhm.
about like
There are
stretching
different types
deep
of yoga.
muscles. Exactly. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, if meditation's feeling too difficult, then my best recommendations for you would be to start off small and do like 1 minute. Like that's actually, I spoke to
Hmm.
someone I met in Medellin a few months ago, and he was like, I'm really trying to get into meditation. And I was like, wow, like, let me give you some of my things that I've worked for me. And he was like, I gave him the Balance app first of all. And what Balance is really great at is it doesn't make you meditate for 30 minutes a day. It's literally like, okay, do a
Yeah.
few minutes. And because
Which don't start, guys. Don't start at 30 minutes a day.
it's a
You
bad
start
idea
at
to
5
start
minutes
at
or
30 minutes a
less.
day. And I think it's also a bad idea to start it on your own as well. Like I would always suggest like trying to do a guided meditation first.
Yep.
Um, also like maybe just go for a walk, practice mindfulness, like be in the moment, come off your phone, like just literally sit with yourself for half an hour, like go for a half an hour walk, like in nature, for example, and literally just be alone and don't
Right.
um
No podcast, no whatever. Like you're just
exactly,
walking and you're watching your steps walking or you're looking at the
exactly.
trees around you. That's mindfulness walking.
Exactly. And that's actually something that they do at the monastery. They make you go on a half an hour walk where you are literally, you walk with your hands like just on your stomach so that you can feel your breath. They make you think about your breath, think about, I can't remember what the exact mantra was, but it's like where you're like stepping, they make you think about like
Okay.
pit, pat, or something like that in your brain
Yeah,
whilst
yeah.
you're walking, like not counting your steps, but like being more conscious of your steps so you're more into like the present moment.
Right.
Even things like I guess gratitude, different sleep meditations on Spotify and like different apps that you can use, like they've all got like guidance on there, so like start with that. I'd say like that was definitely a big factor. I think for me was like having somebody speak to me whilst guide me through the process. It's almost like, again, we're training a muscle here, so we need the lesson first to then go out and
Right.
actually take action, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think those are all really, really solid points. It's just right? Like when and you mentioned mantras too. That's another thing, like counting mantras, like singing, like, so they call it like Vedas in
Yeah,
yoga. Like there's that kind of thing that can be really helpful as well. But with all of these different techniques, it is a friendly reminder to not forget that the purpose of meditation is not to empty your mind. It is to sit with yourself and learn how to let your thoughts pass you by. And you can do meditation in a variety of ways, and there's lots of resources out there. So I know like you and I will probably share stuff in the show notes. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know we're on a time limit today a little bit, but my last piece that I would like to share with people. So the tattoo on my back, it is the like pranasaya symbol for breath. And when people ask me about it, this is what I tell them. So this is why it was really important. And I learned this lesson is that, right? The first thing we do when we're born is we take a breath. The last thing that we do when we die is take a breath. And the thing that we do every day to keep us alive is breathe. And that's what keeps us like staying alive in the present moment. And so really lean into that, whether that be via meditation or other practices. I would say meditation, yoga, and breath work saved my life and making me go on a different trajectory of who I am as an adult now. I mean, well, I'm 33 now, and this all kind of started for me when I was 28. So it's never too late to make the changes you need for yourself.
That's amazing. I think that's a really good bit of motivation for anybody that is looking to get into meditation. I think the thing is everybody's capable of doing this. I think it's just a case of like really setting your mind to training yourself how. So I think we'll leave it there for today. If we want to jump back into this subject, we will if you find it interesting. But for now, thanks for
Perfect.
listening to our episode today. If this resonated with you, be sure to give us a like, and we would love to hear your feedback in the comments about what topics you'd like to hear more about. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us on socials, and join the community at timesnotahealer.com. All of the details can be found in the episode description below. Remember, you have the power to heal. Until next time, you've got this.